Internet, YouTube, friends, foes, YouTube foes even. I'm going to make a comment on the Durnford situation, and just a reminder that my show will be happening, opening October the 1st in London. If you're near London, come and talk to me. I'll be at the opening Saturday evening from 7 to 9. Have a chin wag, and I'm going to comment. I don't want to leave this because Durnford has been convicted of criminal harassment, and I want to comment on the situation, the way I understand this, the way I see this, what is unfolding against a person of conscience, an incredibly powerful individual, I believe, in terms of what he has taken on. We always pick our fights, and some are more amazing than others. If you look in history, the people that had the fortitude and strength to stand up to a system that is based on conformity. And I think that what we're facing, and before I go into this, I just want to say what I find really interesting, people. If you look at my YouTubes, the last 10, 15, 20, 30, I don't know, I haven't counted, but the dislikes are 2, 3, 4, 5 to 1. Outpace the likes, which is interesting. Now, somebody who has an opinion like myself, and I've commented on the abuse that the system endorses through institutions in Canada, the residential schools against children, Native children, and the people that expose this abuse or show what it is that we're involved in within a community of people that say, hey, everything is okay. Like Kevin Annett, who's published books, who has been an activist to try and expose the atrocity and criminal acts committed against the Native community, especially children. And I speak out, and I think this is something that rattles the cages of the pedophiles. And they're trying to come up with excuses like the Native community does not appreciate Kevin Annett. And I have not met Kevin Annett, so I can't say specifically all the background stuff, but the guy has suffered. The guy has suffered amazingly. He's lost his family, and they try to turn it around into a negative. I mean, you know, they delight in the misfortunes of others. What you'll see is people that take this position against those of conscience or those that appear to be of conscience, and until I see otherwise, I will endorse and commit my support towards people like Annett. And people like Durnford is a no-brainer. I mean, Durnford is doing exactly what he says he's doing, but then you have a backlash that happens. And in the case of my channel, it seems to be happening that is happening to no other people that I'm keeping track of that are being contrarian or presenting a position that is contrary to this mega monster of society, institutions, and everything. I'm just saying I don't like the way it's going. It's not working, people. It's not working. I'm saying it's not working. And the reason it's not working is we don't defend the vulnerable and the children. And we let the nuclear cartel syndicate criminal guys get away with poisoning the planet. And it's not working. It won't work. We may hang in there for a while, but for a while longer. But unless we get a hold of this, and I'm going to say how I believe we can get a hold of it, and everybody has their fight, and people that come and they're attack dogs, and you know that they're attack dogs because they're relentless. They're relentless. They pick and they turn stories around to suit their accusations, which is all they are. There is nothing they have on people that speak out with conscience, because those people, whatever their flaws might be, we know that they're righteous, that their intentions are pure. And we see this in history. For example, I'll just say this is the preamble to my Durnford comment, is that when you look at, for example, the Catholic Church held up as the progenitors of the righteousness on the planet, the people that are supposedly enforcing the laws of God on their stone tablets. Where the hell are those two tablets one of them broke, as Carl Reiner said on his Moses thing. Moses came down with 3 tablets, the 15 commandments, and as he's stepping out to talk to his people, one of them drops, and he says, "People, I have the 10 commandments." So these people who are supposedly the beacons of hope for us in terms of our future, as an example, were endorsing slavery, probably still do. Well, they do in terms of cheap labor in China. The church hasn't. What have they said about cheap labor in China? Yeah, well, their robes, their Bangladeshi cloth that they wear, these sissies in dresses, what they're wearing. That's, by the way, Michael Fazio's term. Michael Fazio, who's blocked me, but I like this guy, Michael Fazio. He's quite a character. He calls them the sissies in dresses. Wearing their Bangladeshi sissy and dresses clothes, and these people endorsed slavery as a morally, an upright moral position to take, that you could have all the slaves you want, sell them, do whatever the hell you want with them. And it wasn't until about, I think, late 1800s that there was a shift, and they said, oh, geez, I think people are getting smarter about this. We're going to look like a bunch of idiots if we don't come out. Not that they really feel what they're saying, but they said slavery is wrong. In 1890, the moral code, which is supposedly etched in stone, that the stuff that he came down from the mountain with, the moral code that is like, it's genetic, it's definitive. Slavery is okay. Oh no, now it's not okay. So you see what I'm saying? It's like convenience, people of convenience, and somebody, for example, like Emile Zola, who wasn't that well off in the beginning, and then he wrote. I loved Germinal and L'Assommoir. This is, I think, when he was already quite well known. He defended a person called Dreyfus, the Dreyfus affair. And it was perfectly normal to convict people. This was a Jew convicted of conspiracy or treason, and they convicted him, and it turns out he wasn't guilty. And this happens all the time in history. When people close their eyes and the atrocities committed by a system that is maintaining itself. This is what I'm seeing, and this is what I'm seeing in the Durnford situation. A system that is protecting itself. Because fundamentally, all right, here we go. Let's say that I make a statement, and it's inflammatory. And I will not, whereas I may have before somewhat more ornery in my presentation. I have no intention. I have never had any intention to hurt anyone. This is not how I function, especially when I say protect the vulnerable. And even the reptiles attack dog hyenas. I do not endorse physical violence. What I'm trying to explain is that Durnford is up against it, and he's a singular human being committed to exposing this catastrophe like no one else has done. The commitment this person has shown in terms of his effort to go in a wheelchair. He's barely able to walk. He is what in Canada is referred to as disabled. He is a disabled person. And for him to actually have the fortitude, the strength, and the courage to step out, being vulnerable himself, to defend what he sees against the atrocities committed by a system that is functioning on a fundamental principle of conformity of supporting profits at whatever expense it might be, no matter what the industry, people that are committed to continuing on a path of destruction, because it doesn't matter when I'm gone, and people see their own lives in terms of what, like 100 years, 80 years, 70 years, and nothing will really matter too much. When I'm gone, it doesn't matter. And I think this is the myopic, why we have ended up in a situation where people are so myopic about something that, and I have talked about this in terms of eternity, that we cannot play footsie with something we have no clue about, the mystery. And what we're engaging in is a very extreme, or let me put it this way, we are engaging our ability to do right or wrong will have an effect. I'm convinced will have an effect, not just as we experience existence now for the next 10, 20, 50 years, 100 years. There is a continuity, I'm convinced. So I'm not going to be able to explain this to anyone that doesn't have a feeling around this, what I call eternity. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to try and keep it short, keep it simple. What I want to say about the situation with Durnford is that the commitment comes out of an understanding of the severity of our situation in the present, with a connection to the larger mystery. This is what excites me about this person, that he's actually doing the difficult task. Like Zola, he had to escape. Zola had to escape. They exonerated him. Dreyfus was exonerated. We have this in history. The church says slavery is fine, and then they have to change their mind. The system will always attack those that do not comply within the format of this conformity. And I'm not going to go into oligarchy and all of this. And here's how I see myself in relation to Durnford, that his effort is absolutely inspirational to me. And I have my limitations and I have my abilities, and I'm a painter. I make paintings. I'm standing in front of my archetypal guerrero, the guerrilla guy, Che Guevara, and how they brutally murdered him. Now, Che was not a Boy Scout. He was a nasty piece of work. But he represents the resistance against an oppressive oligarchy, an oppressive system that is conforming. And we all have our limitations, just like Guevara. So I'm standing in front of it. I think it's appropriate. So the way I see this is that this system will make sure that anyone that speaks out that might actually have an effect, and have no doubt that the Zola J'accuse had a huge effect on the population and the publicity it got. And of course, Dana's challenge now, he's not getting Emile Zola publicity because we don't have what radio stations are telling me. They're not interested in talking to me because I have no credibility. I'm a conspiracist. Maybe I'll attach a little bit of a fellow called me, very nice guy, talked to me from the radio station because I wanted to talk about my paintings and how it's difficult to get them into the museums, and a gallery is showing them, and he said, well,
I mean, we deal with local issues here, right? This is mainly what our bread and butter is as a radio broadcasting building, whether it be news or whether it be our 3 radio stations and the announcers on it. We deal with very local issues. So it's tough to go through us to start worrying about the Pacific or Japan. What you need to rattle the chains off are people who have more global mindedness. Now, I know you're trying to do that with the CBC.
yeah.
And I can't speak for them necessarily, but maybe they get 4 conspiracies a week phoning them, and it might be, again, like I said right off the bat, there's just so many conspiracies out there. It's incredibly tough to be that one that gets through.
There you go. Radio station, local radio station. I was a lark. Like I said, they're an entertaining. They're not rattling anybody's cage. But I just want you to hear what somebody, a good person. He is a good person. But you know what? They shut down because profit's everything. And then my kids have leukemia. But you know what? It's a conspiracy, and I don't really want to think about it. What can I say? Should I lead into this Durnford thing here? Should I connect this? I'm not sure if it's connected. I'm just going to stop it here and see if I'll tie this into my Durnford dissertation. So the way I see this is it's absolutely fitting in when we get engaged on the level that Durnford is engaging, his activism and what he has actually shown exposed. The tidal pools are not replenishing themselves. They're gone. They're gone. Life has disappeared in the tidal pools. And you still have salmon, you have bigger animals floating around. Of course you have life in the Pacific, but we're talking about microscopic life, which is likely being totally annihilated by the radiation coming out of Fukushima in the Pacific, and he's shown it. He's done the work. So how can you criticize someone? How can you even question the integrity of a person that says and does exactly what he says, that says something and does what he says? And this is the insidious part, like I said about the likes and dislikes. You get attacked. And I'm actually encouraged to continue. I'm not placing a lot of importance on my YouTube presence anymore. I need to establish credibility in my work for anyone to pay attention, like I hear from the radio stations. They're calling me back and saying, why should we listen to your story? You have no credibility. 45 years of making paintings. I guess I have no credibility as an artist. And, well, are you an activist or a scientist or a painter? I said, I'm a painter who has understood intuitively, like through all of history, painters have understood. They've done portraits. They've shown people the essence of our nature. What credibility are you looking for, right? The myopic vision of the world as it is promoted through these institutions, these media institutions. They have no credibility as far as I'm concerned because they have no insight, no inspiration, no originality, none of the stuff that actually really matters to push humanity forward, but they turn it around and say, well, you don't have credibility. Right, I don't have credibility because I don't do what you want me to do. That's why I don't have credibility. That's why I'm a conspiracy guy, because I'm saying I understand this is so monumental, not because I'm a scientist, but because I'm a human being that is still able to feel what it means to be a human being. I'm shouting. So the way this is going to work, like I've always said, we have to support the people that stick their necks out, that are integral. And Durnford is an integral human being. I have not seen anything to the contrary. If you do what you say, for me, you're integral. Like Kevin Annett as well. He's integral. From what I can see, he's saying protect the vulnerable. How can you argue that? And even if there were weaknesses in a person, if the overall contribution is for such an enormous effect for the better, all right, so you have a flaw. And they talk about Kennedy. They talk about Kennedy being a womanizer, that he had to have a different woman every day in the office. Did he do some good? Yeah, of course he did some good. Now, Kennedy issue is another. I find that whole family to be quite insidious and degenerate. They're a bunch of degenerates. They fit in. But he did have some good things to do, so there are people within the system. And even Martin Luther King, he was a womanizer apparently as well, but it didn't hurt getting his people, to the promised land. Well, it's not really the promised land, but he gave it a good shot, so he did good work. So the way actually this works for me, and I'll end it here, the way it works for me is that by acting my own conscience in my circle, in my sphere of influence, and do little by little, maybe not go along the coast and document the tidal pools dying, but make the paintings that reflect my insight and understanding, my intuition, foremost as an artist, as a painter. My intuition is connected to something that I may not have an explanation for, but I don't throw it out or deny it. I let it go, I let it flow, and I'm letting these paintings flow. I'm letting these paintings flow. The show that I'm doing in which are not, and I was asked, are these paintings related to the thing that you're trying to express in your conspiracy? I said yes. They are inspired by the idea that our ocean, the most valuable body of water on this planet, is being destroyed. They're inspired by that. And I'm trying to get my foot in the door surreptitiously, and it's inspired by a person like Durnford, who has made the commitment, to face the adversity, and he's being hammered. And we do sometimes we're not careful, but that is the smallest part of our affliction, which is going to be used and abused by a system that must sustain itself at the expense of those that understand how dangerous it is to comply. And people that are working for the institutions within a system if they have any conscience left, will, and this is my hope, that the justice system or the military or the politicians will be affected by people like Durnford or myself, or people that have this understanding that we must care and act that caring in a local, immediate way. And that will make the difference. That will make the difference, like that butterfly that flaps its wings on the other side of the planet and a hurricane happens in your backyard. And this is how I believe it works. So an excuse to say, well, I'm not going to make a video and defend Durnford because the system is so big. No, that's not how it works. This is part, and it's only part of what I feel I need to contribute to making this place a better place and rid ourselves and rid ourselves of all the conceptions that restrict us from acting our conscience every day. We need to shed this stuff, and people will be affected by it. People, it's that, that passive resistance, that thing that happens, that a lot of like Gandhi, the idea that you act locally. You go to the beach and you grab your salt, make your own salt. Don't be part of the paymaster's rule. And they got pummeled, they got punished, but what happened? India's independent because Gandhi said, go get the salt off the beach. And that's what we're all having to do. We have to join up and get our salt off the beach. Maybe that's what I'll call this.